The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said in the past hour that Russia is failing in its war aims. He was speaking in Poland after a trip to Kyiv, the first such US visit since President Putin launched his invasion in February. Mr. Blinken said a sovereign, independent Ukraine would still be around long after the Russian leader had gone. The Secretary of State and the Defence Secretary Lloyd took a train from Poland to Kyiv and met the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Antony Blinken said it was an important moment to be in Ukraine and to show support for the country. He said while in the capital Kyiv, he saw people walking around and it was a sign that Russia had already failed its mission.
We certainly saw people on the streets in Kyiv, evidence of the fact that the battle for Kyiv was won. And there is what looks, from the surface at least, to be normal life in Kyiv. But that's in stark contrast to what's going on in other parts of Ukraine in the south and the east, where the Russian brutality is doing horrific things to people every single day. In terms of wars won and lost, again, I come back to the proposition that in terms of Russia's war aims, Russia has already failed, and Ukraine has already succeeded, because the principal aim that President Putin brought to this, in his own words, was to fully subsume Ukraine back into Russia, to take away its sovereignty and independence. And that has not happened and clearly will not happen.
The US Defence Secretary Lloyd reiterated the West's support for Ukraine as the war continues.
The first step in winning is believing that you can win. And so they believe that we can win. We believe that we can win. They can win if they have the right equipment, the right support. And we're going to do everything we can, continue to do everything we can to ensure that that gets. So we're engaged with the Chad, engaged with the Minister of Defense, and as this fight evolves, their needs will change. And so as those needs change, we'd like to be one step ahead, but we're going to be responsive to what the Chad and the Ahmad believe that they need.
Our correspondent Joe Inwood is in Kyiv and following developments for us. Joe, welcome to you. Well, as important as the visit by these two diplomats to the country was, really their words very specific, reiterating their support, but the fact they were there in the first place tells us everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the United States has been, without question, the biggest backer of Ukraine, of its war effort, and that's been financial. A huge amount of money, more announced yesterday, $3.7 billion in total, and an extra $700 million yesterday. But there's significance in the visuals of them being here. It says something about how they think the war is going. The fact, although they haven't reopened the embassy, they say they're going to look at doing it. The Americans are quite cautious with the security of their people, and so whereas other embassies have reopened already, the Americans are going to move some people back into the country. But it does tell you what they think the direction of travel in this war is. They think that Kyiv is safe enough for two of their most senior officials to come and visit, and that tells you that they think the war is going in Ukraine's direction.
And the language was very important, talking about us, really clearly stating their absolute shoulder-to-shoulder support with Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually he got his words a little muddled there and said us when he probably was talking about the Ukrainians. But yes, they are absolutely in lockstep on this. They're providing as much support as they say they can. Also words of suggesting that the Russians had failed in their objective. I thought that was quite interesting as well, that the Ukrainians, just by holding on, just by defending the capital, the Ukrainians, he said, had already won.
And it's going to be interesting, I guess, going forward. I mean, the Americans have committed hundreds of millions of dollars militarily, but where does that support end? I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but, is it just going to be ongoing until this does end?
I think, given the amount of money they've put in, it seems the Americans are all in on this one. Again, we can't predict the future, but it seems highly unlikely that they would at some point decide that this was too costly. I believe Congress has approved even more funding than's been offered already. So yes, the funding probably will keep going as long as the Ukrainians are able to fight. I thought there was one other quite interesting point from the press conference. A journalist asked the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense about weapons that were going missing or that were being lost and abandoned and ending up in the hands of the Russians. And the Secretary of State didn't deny this. He said, of course, it is difficult in war. Sometimes things will go awry. But it was interesting, I thought, that there was a kind of a tacit and implicit acknowledgement there that some of the help that is supposed to be going to the Ukrainians is unfortunately and ultimately ending up in the hands of the Russians instead.
And it's going to be interesting, Joe, to see if we get any kind of reaction from the Kremlin, from President Putin.
Yes, whether we will, I think we'll have to wait and see. He will not probably be happy, but probably not surprised at the level of support. In terms of diplomatic moves in Moscow, we do have tomorrow the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres visiting Moscow and then coming here to Kyiv on Thursday. There was some disquiet actually about the order of those visits, but so we might be getting some diplomatic news, some movement out of Moscow tomorrow.
OK, for now, Joe in Kyiv, thank you.